and thank you very much for speaking to us. So you're the man behind the book Insanely Simple, right, which actually talks about how simple or simplicity in simplicity lies the essence of how Apple was built as a product company, and then of course designed.
Yes, this is very true, and I had the pleasure, well, it wasn't exactly a pleasure, it was a lot of hard work, but working with Steve Jobs for basically 12 years, and it was my observation that simplicity was just a part of him, a very big part of him. It was how he looked at everything. It wasn't just the products, it was how the company was organized and how we advertised and all that kind of stuff. So I thought it was worthy of a book because I worked with other companies that were very complicated and didn't succeed on the level of Apple.
Right. So if I may ask you to use a product as an example, and then how the whole approach to simplicity was manifested in the way Steve Jobs thought and in the way you interpreted that to finally sort of design or build.
Well, I think, the iPhone is a great example. When it came out, almost every phone on the market, well, BlackBerry was the big, famous, popular phone, and it was just covered with buttons and keyboards and all that kind of stuff. So it was funny because during my briefing at Apple on the iPhone, the product manager talked about how everyone at Apple used BlackBerry. That was the way they operated. But they were frustrated by it because it had all these features, but they couldn't get to the features. They were all like under a menu inside a menu inside a menu, and they were going to create this device that made everything very clear. It would have many of the same features and many new features, but they'd be all instantly accessible. And then there are stories about how the engineers wanted, the designers wanted 3 buttons on the phone, and Steve Jobs wanted no buttons on the phone. And I guess they arrived at 1, but 1 button being sort of a symbol of simplicity compared to all the other phones that were out there. So I think it's run through Apple history with Steve Jobs in particular, that he would always look at things through this lens of simplicity and arrive at a product that people could love.
Right. And I'm going to ask you about how you're taking some of these learnings beyond Apple and into your next book. But is this changing now in Apple? Is that your sense?
Well, it's a tough question because Steve Jobs was unique and he could never ever be replaced. So right from the beginning, Apple could not be the same. It has to change in some way. I think, what they've done, Tim Cook has several people that sort of together equal Steve Jobs in theory, but they're different people. They don't have that unified kind of vision and talent. But the question is, can they still be great? I think they can be because the values are well instilled in the company. So it's like anything. Life goes on. Walt Disney dies, and the company goes on without him, and hopefully his values keep the company going to some degree. I think Apple will be fine, but it'll be different.
So tell us about the next book. So you're talking about taking the learnings of simplicity within a corporation specifically and taking it to other corporations, or how entrepreneurs or businesses can use that.
Yeah, the new book I'm basing on about 40 interviews all around the world, CEOs and other business leaders of companies in many different industries. Some very famous people, some not so famous, some small companies, big companies, but companies in financial and all kinds of different areas. The theory is that whatever you do, you would be able to find some ideas in there because people talk about how they have simplified. Like a bank, for instance, that offered like 40 or 50 different kinds of credit cards and decided to take a fresh look at how they do that and sort of cut that, suddenly they're down to a small handful of credit cards and their sales go up. It's like, oh, I see, we're not confusing people anymore. So there's some basic principles like that that are almost obvious, but you can take in that case, a business that's huge. We're talking about one of the biggest banks in Australia, and they found a way to simplify, and everyone benefits from that, the internal workings of the bank as well as the customers.
Right, that sounds interesting. So when is your book due, Ken?
Well, that's a tough question to answer, actually. It's in the edit stage now. I expect it'll be around June.
And we look forward to that, and all the best.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.